Hey, everybody, this is Helena Hart. Welcome back to my Master Your Magnetism podcast. I'm talking with Jack Butler again today. He's a dating and transformational coach who helps people become more of who they are so they can be loved for who they are in any area of life. Welcome, Jack. Thanks for joining me again.
Yeah, great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We always have the best conversations. We recently posted a podcast episode and it's just doing so phenomenal. I knew I had to bring you back on my podcast, and we're actually streaming this episode live on YouTube. So if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple or anywhere else and you'd like to see a video of this episode, I'll include that in the episode notes. I'm also going to include a link for Jack's coaching, because for just an extremely limited time, you're offering a deep discount on private coaching. Do you want to talk a little bit about that while we're waiting for some people to join us live? And of course, we'll talk more about that at the end too.
Yeah, so this is a one-time offer. This is a private coaching special. This is my private coaching package where you get a extensive private coaching with me, in addition to access to my online curriculum called The Transformation. And if you just click the link beneath the video, it will take you through to the enrollment page. You can see everything that has to do with it. This is really for anyone that wants to do a deeper dive, right? I'm known in the coaching world to be compassionate, but by direct, and get to the heart of your transformation, which is how do you drop parts of you that are not really you, so that the authentic you can come into your life and into your dating, which is what most of you want, if it's available to you. Well, this work will make it available to you. So for any of you that are interested, I'd love for you to reach out, check out the offer, use the coupon codes, and that will get you a 50% discount. And this is a one-time only offer, and I don't know if I'm ever going to run this again, because I might not be enrolling private coaching clients in 2025.
50%. Wow. And the coupon code is Helena, my first name, right? That's Helena. If you're just listening on my podcast, I'll include all that information on the episode notes. So if you're watching on YouTube, click the title of this video. It will open up the description, and that will be the first link in there. I'll also add it to the comment section after we're done streaming this live. Hello to everyone joining. And let's dive into this topic, Jack. I know we've been hearing from so many women who are dealing with what we call a low effort man.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been saying this for years. Often the problem in these situations is that this man gets the sense that the woman's not going anywhere. So he can kind of treat her however he wants and come and go as he pleases. Do you want to talk a little bit about what a low effort man is and what this looks like before we dive in? Because I think you have 5 points that you want to share with everyone today, right?
That's right. Yeah. Well, yeah, just to start off definitionally, if you will, we're saying a low effort man is actually a man that's not interested to have a real or committed relationship with you. That would be the typical definition. And by the way, a low effort man is also what you take to be a low effort man, right? Meaning there's not only a universal definition of this, there's also what do you want? And we're prioritizing what is your authentic desire. And if your authentic desire is for a more invested or committed style of relationship, then we're giving you permission to own what you want and to go for it. So everything that I share today will be in line with that.
That sounds great. This actually isn't something I've talked about before on my podcast in this way. And so I always love everything you have to share. Are we ready to dive into that first thing a woman should do if she's dealing with a man who's not putting in a lot of effort, or maybe he was for a little while, but the effort's kind of stopped, or he's pulling back a little bit?
Yeah. So the first thing that you can do is what I call sobering up. So over on my channel, we talk a lot about sober is the new sexy, meaning seeing things clearly for what they actually are. That's a sexy thing to do, right? Where we tend to get into issue is when we add in things that aren't actually true to the connection, or we start to make excuses for the other person, or we start to fill in a story, right? Maybe he's still hurt from his previous relationship. Maybe he needs to get to therapy. Maybe he needs to heal. Some of those things may or may not be true, but that's not really your job or responsibility. Your job is to sober up and notice, how much effort is this guy putting in? And if he's putting in a low amount of effort, then we want to see that for what it is. And we want you to be able to get clear, this is a low effort guy in this season. It doesn't mean to say he couldn't be something in another season. It doesn't even mean to say that he couldn't be higher effort with someone else. We want to just see for you right now in this season today, what is the level of effort coming in your direction? And can you see it clearly, period, without having to fill in, rationalize, make excuses, fantasize, because all that is stuff that you're putting into the equation. That's your work. We want to keep you in your lane of seeing things as clearly as they are. So we talk about sobriety being not too much, not too little, or seeing things exactly as they are, not how you wish they were.
It's so important. This can be difficult, right? We've all been there. So there's no judgment here. I'd love to hear from everyone listening live. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Let us know.
It's not a one and done deal, right?
Yeah.
It's a bit like, I don't know if you've ever tried to modify your diet or eat in a certain way, right? It's not that 10 years ago you did a diet thing and now you just live off that for the next 10 years, right? If you pay attention to your diet, you have to pay attention to it ongoingly. That's how it works. If you start to slack off, it doesn't work for you. Similar thing with sobriety. For most of us, it's a practice. So I'm saying that don't be hard on yourself. If maybe right now listening to this, you're like, oh gosh, yeah, if I'm really honest with myself, this guy is being low effort. That's okay. Your sobriety and awareness is now. It starts now. We don't need to worry about yesterday. That's done. It starts today, and you can take a different course of action. But it only comes from bringing that awareness in. And even if you did it last time, you might notice the next person you date, oh, gosh, this is low effort as well. And so the thing is, you start to reduce that amount of time and trust in yourself to notice, this is not what I'm looking for, and I can take a course of action that is in line with that.
Yeah, I know a lot of women in my community, a lot of people in general who are drawn to this work are very sweet and caretaking, maybe people-pleasing, very true blue kind of women. And of course, men can absolutely be this way as well. My podcast audience and my audience here on YouTube is mostly women. And so I always talk from the woman's perspective, but it can be easy to make excuses for a guy, buy into his excuses, because we're hanging on to that little bit of hope that if we just hang in there and wait around, things will start to change. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. I don't know what the other 4 secrets are you're going to share. Do you want to move into that next one, or is there anything else you want to say here?
Well, just we can come back to it if it's appropriate, but just to put a pin in what you're saying with language that I would use, you're talking about false hope, right? So true hope doesn't normally need your mind to overlay expectations, kind of build the thing up, discount evidence. False hope is where you're kind of keeping a thing alive in spite of the evidence. It's normally a mind manipulation on yourself to protect yourself from feeling the potential hurt or rejection of, oh, this person isn't that into it. I find that it's easier for you to learn how to be with that rejection. It's not actually, if you really think about it deeply, it's not really a personal rejection of you. It's that the life or the universe is not arranging for there to be a deep enough connection between the two of you for it to mutually sustain into some kind of relationship. So learning how to take that differently is helpful, because then you can see things clearly and not have to manipulate it back to yourself. Normally the false hope is, oh gosh, maybe one day, maybe just one day, or maybe if I do this thing, or maybe if he gets into therapy. And a lot of it is actually anxiety at its base. It's your anxiety keeping a hope alive, rather than you stabilizing right now in presence of what is your actual experience. Oh, I'm anxious that there's not a future with this guy. And actually, when I get sober, there's also not a future with this guy. So it's kind of true.
Yeah. I remember that feeling of being like, hey, he's just not that into it right now. That's okay. It doesn't mean anything about my value or this.
That's it.
Plug this into any situation, right? It doesn't mean anything about me personally. It's just not, be interested in someone else in that way, but that's not happening here right now. And that's okay. Kind of making peace with that. So again, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. You want to, do you want to move into that second point?
No, I love that. That getting to that's okayness. So it relates to what I want to say next, which is learning how to not take it personally, right? Which is in a sense what you're starting to say there. And one of the ways that I attack this is by getting people to repeat to themselves that a man has a right to be low effort, right? Meaning that's on his side of the fence. He has a right to be low effort. You have a right to not keep a low effort man in your life, or you have a right to not invest in a low effort man. But it gets simpler for you when you don't make him wrong, which is what I hear you saying when you say, that's okay. I'm not making him wrong, but I do want to make me right, which means I do want to take a stand for my right to not have to continue or connect with or persuade or manipulate a low effort guy to be anything other than he actually is to me. So that's the sort of distinction. We stop judging or making wrong for a guy being low effort. The fancy way of saying this is the difference between discernment and judgment. So judgment is that's wrong, he shouldn't do that. Discernment is this isn't right for me. he gets to be that, but it's just not a good fit for me. He might be a good fit for someone else. Maybe there's someone who's coming out of a long-term relationship and they just want a guy that texts them once a week. Maybe that's a good fit. Or maybe there's someone who's polyamorous and they want a low-effort additional partner. Maybe that's it. That's okay. So we don't make it wrong. We just, discernment is what's right for me, and owning it, owning your authentic desire. And the more you discern, the less you judge, the easier it is for you.
There's so much power in that. It's hard to even describe how powerful that is. And we're not making excuses for men, or if a man's really treating you poorly, obviously we're not saying, it's okay, right? We're not making excuses for men here, but we're saying that you have the power to accept or not accept.
That's it.
What you're allowing into your life, right? Is this a good fit for me? And I hear from so many women who have all this energy around it. You know, I was friends with someone years ago where a guy just clearly wasn't all that interested. And she's like, well, screw him. And she's so angry at, not that your emotions are wrong or bad or anything. You obviously want to feel those things, but it was kind of keeping her attracting that same kind of person over and over because there was so much energy around. She just couldn't believe that this guy didn't want a committed relationship with her. And so I think kind of neutralizing that a little bit and just seeing it for what it is, not taking it personally, can make all the difference in the world.
Yes, I agree. I think what you're describing there with your friend is it's hit the rejection wound, and it's hit it hard enough that it's activated that wound big. And then there's a kind of like a counter rejection that happens to defend you, right? Well, screw him, because it feels so bad to hit that rejection wound.
Right.
Through time, you can learn how to relax the sensitivity of that wound. It might also be a sensitivity, but there's a difference between a sensitivity and it being like a full-blown wound. And part of that is actually owning that other people have a right to want what they want. And once you get that, then it's like, it's his business what he wants, but it's my business what I want. And you also might find you start to reject yourself and other people less. So when that rejection complex is strong, it's not just that other people reject you and it hurts. Often you counter reject. Sometimes you preemptively reject other people, right? Because you fear that they're not going to be into it. So you start pushing them away or making them wrong. And normally, this is the bit of self-work that I often do with people, is how do you stop rejecting yourself? Because there are typically parts of yourself that you reject or shame. And that's the same mechanism that's hurting you when a guy says, hey, I'm not going to put much effort in your direction. The less that you judge and blame and shame yourself, the less it hurts when someone else says, I'm not that into it, or you in sobriety realize they're not that into it.
Right. So important. I have so much more I could say on this one. I know we don't have a whole lot of time today. Is there anything else you want to say here, or should we move on to the next thing a woman should do?
Let's move it on. And then if there's time at the end and we want to open up anything more, I'm happy to do that. Yeah.
That sounds great.
So the third thing to do is to not get into reciprocation that doesn't serve you. So what I mean by reciprocation in this instance is not getting into good morning and good night texts, or not getting into some kind of ritual that implies that there's more of a connection or relationship than there actually is. There should be a process to date you. Now you get to decide what that is, but I sometimes like to make this simple. Like I'm plenty complex in how I view the world, but also a lot of life I think is at its essence can be made more simple. I was lucky I got to go to Cambridge University, right? This is a desired university in the UK, but to get to Cambridge, you definitely have to apply. Right? No one is just walking up and saying, hey, I want to come study here. There is a process. And to date you or to get into a relationship with you, there should also be a process, which might involve a minimum amount of taking you on dates, a minimum amount of paying attention to you, a minimum amount of consistency or progression of interest through time. You get to decide this, right? Maybe you need flowers, maybe you need chocolates. You can have whatever you want as that process, but don't get into a reciprocation without that process, because that's normally going to equal pain. So don't allow yourself to start getting into, well, now I'm already texting him back and forth, so it kind of feels strange to dial it back. You are allowed to dial it back, right? So that's often a sobriety check to say, oh, hey, I notice we kind of text each other good night, good morning, but we've only been on 2 or 3 dates. And that sort of behavior I tend to reserve for someone that I'm in an exclusive relationship that has some potential. And so it's sweet that you want to do that, but I'm starting to feel like that's not actually appropriate to where my heart is or where this relationship is. So none of this is saying you can't renegotiate, but sometimes simpler is on the front end before you get into that, is to not get into it. Now, you might say, well, gosh, if he's texted me good morning and I don't text back, isn't that rude? I don't think that's actually rude. I think that's you discerning what's right for you. You could text him back in the afternoon and say, hey, how's your day going? Or you could text him back the next day and say, thanks for your message, but actually make the content of your message not about good morning and goodbye, but about, something else, or whether we're going to see each other, or you have the right to do that. So a lot of this is working on places that you might overextend yourself for fear of not being quote kind or quote being rude, to actually maybe recalibrate that you getting more connected to your truth is more important than just trying to be nice to someone, when being quote nice to them gets you into behavior that's not actually supporting your sobriety and your truth.
Right. And actually causes you to invest more in your mind.
Correct.
Too. I think the key to avoiding those first two things we talked about was we get invested prematurely before we really know whether or not the two of you were on the same page. I just posted a new video last week on how to not get invested and fall for a guy prematurely. I think if you can rein that back in and not get invested, and so you know that this guy's interested and he wants a relationship or whatever it is that you want, the two of you are on the same page. If you can not get into these sort of relationship kind of behaviors, the constant texting, right? I think that will serve you really, really well. Save you from so much pain and heartache. And also, there's so much I could say here, but I think that will serve you really well. It can be difficult, but I totally get what you were saying. Right? You want to be nice, you want to reciprocate, but when women do that, I think it causes them to build this up into their mind into something that maybe it's not.
Totally. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what, and it's a little sort of brutal way of saying it, but just to be clear about it, that's what I often call the self-manipulation, right? Where you've kind of manipulated or fantasized yourself into thinking it's more than the actual data would suggest.
Right.
And by the way, if that is happening and it is your tendency, this is unlikely to be the only place in your life that this happens. So you probably have a liability to building expectations of other people in other places that might not be true to where the actual dynamic is. And the way out of this is generally just to replace expectations with actual agreements. So if you want to be in agreement with someone that you're going to text each other every morning, let's actually make that explicit. Like, is that what we're doing? Why are we doing that? Are we doing that because we're actually boyfriend and girlfriend, or are we doing that because of something else? Let's kind of get clear. So again, the truth is your friend with this. And if you're being kind more than speaking the truth, sometimes what's really under that is that you want people to like you and or love you. And so you're kind of using kindness as a proxy for getting that like and that love, but at the expense of your own authenticity. And then it often doesn't feel good. And then when they actually, or you in the relationship, reveal, oh, this isn't that serious, then typically you get hurt. Then you want to reject them. Then you want to say, well, how could you? How dare you? Then your value gets into question, and all these things that don't need to be so front and center if you approach it more slowly and patiently and soberly from the beginning. So one way of saying this is being slow and patient is generally your friend in these things, because you get to see more rather than amping up here. We're all going to have the tendency to do that because you're excited because you met someone. You're learning how to, actually, let me just take this today at a time. What's true now rather than what I hope or think or could be true. Is going to serve you. The other metaphor that I use for this is like trains on a train line going through different stations. You may want to get to that destination, which could be the committed relationship. That's at the end of the line. And we want it to be okay for you, if you have to get off at any of those stations before that, because you realize actually the train isn't fully going to go to that destination. What we don't want is for you to feel like, oh, if I'd known that wasn't available, I would have got off many stations ago. And now I feel hurt and rejected and upset and angry. Ideally, we want you to calibrate in a sober way what is actually here. And if it's low effort, you kind of want to get off at one of those earlier stations before you've put an amount of effort in that you'd feel bad about getting off.
Mm-hmm. I just saw a quote the other day. I don't remember it exactly, so I'm going to butcher this, but it was like, if you find that you've gone on the wrong train, the faster you can get off and turn around, the less expensive the trip is going to be, or the less effort or something like that. And it's so true. And I don't know about men, maybe men can do this too, but I know women especially, we can tend to put a lot of emphasis on things like texting. And every time we get a message from someone, we think that connection is building, or we're hoping that it's building into something else, where a lot of times the man could be doing that with 8, 9, 10 other women, it doesn't mean as much to the guy in this situation as it does to the woman. So we think every time we hear from him, like the relationship's building, and that isn't always the reality of the situation. That's what I've seen from women in my community. What do you think about that?
Sounds sober to me. Yeah. And I see the risk of it. You know, again, we say sober is the new sexy. Some of these conversations don't sound that sexy. I think it's okay at a point to ask, hey, I'm just curious, how much are you connecting to me versus other people? And not in a way that's judgmental. Like if he says, well, I actually text with 4 other women, that you're like, well, that's outrageous. How dare you? That actually you want to get into reality, right? The reality is, he's not exclusive with you. And that's okay. He has that right. But again, you have that right to say, oh, well, actually, we've known each other for, 3 months or whatever at this stage. I'm not sure that it's good to keep connecting at the level that we have, given that that's true, right? That you can kind of take your power back and get clear what it is that you want. We're trying to avoid the overinvestment. And if you know that that's your tendency, right? So to your video, if people have a tendency to get prematurely attached, you got to slow it down, right? That's your best friend in this, is to imagine, until we know why we're attaching, I'm not attaching. And if I notice my tendency is to be attaching, I need to slow it down even more. Right. And maybe I even need to take some other dates elsewhere just to help keep me calibrated about what is actually on offer here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Is there anything else you want to say here? Should we move into that next point you wanted to share?
Let's move it on. So the 4th thing that you can do with a low effort man is practicing speaking your truth. So this is the hidden opportunity of a low effort man, is actually that you use it for practice. The fear that people often have is that they are going to be used, and maybe you've had that experience where you felt used or taken advantage of. I am a fan of people using their dating for their own practice, right? Sort of meaning, if you know that you tend to err on this side of being nice and being kind and under speaking what's true for you, why don't you use this low effort guy with the stakes aren't that high yet to practice speaking your truth? And one way to practice speaking your truth is to communicate, what are the requirements for dating you, right? What does that actually look like, right? Try to put a bit of texture to it. It doesn't have to be an absolute commitment. You don't have to get it exactly right, but try to ballpark it. Dating you, does that look like, I actually want to go on in-person dates? And for me, if I really felt like I was dating for someone, I would be seeing them at least once, if not twice or more a week. That's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to have a good morning text until we're actually in a relationship, or until I've known you for 3 months. You get to make these rules because they're your rules of engagement. And if you generally go along with other people's rules, this will be a good practice for you, because this is inserting more of you, your authentic desire, your backbone, yourself, your true self into the equation. So it's also a bit of a mental shift of, there are requirements for dating me, right? So one of them might be effort, to talk directly to the question today. And effort might look like a minimum amount of communication and dates that he's initiating, and that he's also declaring to you that he wants to date you, and that maybe he's looking to have a girlfriend, and that this is sort of what we're looking. He doesn't have to make you that, or you don't have to agree to that right now, but that's really the track of why we're going and meeting each other. It's okay if it works out or not, but that's really the game that we're in together. So practicing stating your requirements, and not as sometimes I think as a defense mechanism, people end up with a set of requirements that are almost high maintenance, or kind of maybe they've been treated badly, so they come like, well, to get to know me, it's like it's almost a little bit overwhelming. I think that's a compensatory response. We don't want it to be unwinnable, right? But we are practicing you putting yourself into the equation. So if you know what your requirements are, you can also run and buy some people. Hey, this is what I'm looking for in dating. How does that sound to you? Does it sound fair? Does it sound reasonable? There are no rules with this. Dating is the Wild West, so it's not like someone else has to agree with the way that you're dating, own you and what you need. But this is the practice of speaking your truth into reality.
Yeah, and I think if you have those boundaries really strong and secure on the inside, that's what allows you to be open and soft and inviting on the outside. So it's not about just walking up to a guy and be like, here's my list of requirements. You need to treat me like a queen. Here's what you need to do if you want to date me, right? It's about knowing what that feels like and responding as a woman who knows her value and knows what she wants and deserves would respond. So if something's not feeling right, go ahead and speaking your truth or doing some of the things we talked about at the beginning of this video, right? So it's not about just putting it out there right up front. Of course, you can do that if you're doing it correctly, but it's more about knowing what those standards are for yourself and responding as someone who knows her value and respond.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Yeah, because I think if it's all sort of posted up front, there's a way that I think it's almost coming from a form of subtle defense. Like it's almost a way of pushing people away. And absolutely, we want to be the invitation that you're talking about. So I really like how you said that.
Yeah, imagine if a guy, had that on his profile or was on a first date, came with, you can kind of feel both ways what that would feel like versus someone who just understands what their standards are and doesn't accept anything less. I think there's a big difference there. So I love everything you said on that one. Yeah. Are we ready for number 5?
Let's do it. So number 5 is being willing to downshift and or go no contact in the connection. So I've been with this territory with a lot of clients, and often the pushback to that is either one, that they don't want to give up the false hope, right? So part of them is still hoping that the guy eventually comes round. And I want you to invite you to notice which part of you is holding on to that false hope. Because sometimes it can be a less empowered or younger part of you that is sort of basically saying, please don't abandon me. Please love me. Please pick me. And that's running the show. And we don't want to discount that part of you's there, but we maybe want to put an arm around it and say, hey, adult me has got this. I notice you're there. Thank you for reminding me. But that's not the main place that we're going to strike a contract with someone. And the other reason not to go no contact is because it can be deemed to be unkind. And I do think there's a way that you can do no contact that is loving. And maybe you don't need to do no contact. It could just be that you say, hey, the amount of effort that's coming my way at the moment isn't really a fit for what I'm looking for, because I'm looking for someone that wants to get into a more serious style of relationship. You can decide to leave the door open. Like, hey, if that's ever you, call me back. I can't guarantee if I'll be single or not, but that's okay. The advantage of really downshifting it or going no contact is it kind of makes it clear in the space. And it also opens up your energy to be deployed elsewhere. If an authentic friendship is available, by all means have it. What I have observed is that often authentic friendship is a substitute false hope behavior for like, well, maybe I'll hope at some point that he'll still kick it back up. And I just want you to be really sober about that. That might not be really serving you. If he really does want to kick it back up, he can get back in touch. That's the advantage of saying, well, hey, why don't we just let it go fallow? If there's an emergency, sure, you can reach out to me, but let's kind of let go of this. And if something else forms in the future, fine. But I'm not going to just keep you hanging around in my circle as a sort of friend when we didn't really have a friendship. If you were originally friends and then you maybe decided to date and didn't work out, and you can go back to friends and that's fine for both of you. Sure, that's allowed. But it's, again, a lot of this, if you notice, it's really about being honest with yourself. Is this really just a friendship? Or is it really that you want the upgrade from friendship to partner? And as we say often, that upgrade just, in my experience, isn't available. The friend companion into partner upgrade rarely happens for people, if ever.
We've talked about that in other videos and podcast episodes. So important for people to understand. And this is another one I could just talk forever about, probably. I also hear from a lot of women who say things like, dating in your 40s is just awful. When I was younger, things are so much simpler. The guys out there just don't put in effort. They just want a text buddy, all these different kinds of things. I'm sure you hear these same things as well. And of course, I don't know the exact details of what this person who's saying that is going through. Often I hear this from someone who is holding on to hope from, with some half-hearted connection or some low effort guy. They're kind of still engaging or accepting crumbs or allowing that kind of back and forth, hot and cold behavior. And that's kind of in their energy. They're like sending this signal out of like, this is what I accept. This is what I'm available for. Maybe this is all I can handle, right? Subconsciously, you're kind of sending that out. Where I really see sometimes the fastest way to attract a whole different kind of person or the right one for you is letting go of connections like this, not just having some of these, leaving the door open just in case the guy changes his mind or decides to choose you. I think a lot of times when people are really sober and do close that door, it really opens up a whole different level and caliber of people that are available to them.
I love that. Yeah, because underneath that is some kind of trust in life, the universe, yourself, that something else might be possible. And I have a lot of compassion for people who are in the experience, well, yeah, I get that this isn't great, but it's better than nothing, right? That's sort of the line of thinking. Normally, when we dive into it, what we realize is that it's not just a starter, to use a food metaphor, a starter substituting for a full meal main course. It's a starter, but it's also a starter that causes you a lot of pain. So if it was purely a starter and you're like, yeah, it's not quite as great as the full meal, but it's half of the meal and that's okay. But you're denying that it's actually causing you sleepless nights, sticky palms, heart palpitations, fainting. Like I've seen lots of like hardcore physical symptoms that women, really loving women, experience when they're trying to get something from a relationship that's just not there. Yeah. And so once you put that full kind of cost benefit analysis in, you realize often it's a kind of a net negative. Like, yeah, I get a little bit of connection, I get a few texts, I get a little bit of good morning, but I don't really get any quality connecting. I never really know where I stand. It provokes anxiety. It's affecting my sleep. So if we really get sober about it, that's actually what you're letting go, right? You're getting to get a better night's sleep. You're not having to live in doubt, fear, and mistrust. And so this is where it's part of your spiritual development to try to practice living from a different place, which has a deeper yes to the universe. But I do want to say I genuinely have compassion for that, because that can be a difficult calculation to part of you. But just make sure you do the full calculation. And when you do the full calculation, normally it's clearer.
I was just going to say that, because this is not what love is supposed to feel like, right? It's those same people who are hanging on to those half-hearted connections who say, I'm just fraught with anxiety. I can't sleep at night. I have so much pain and heartache, and it's just not the way it's supposed to be. It's actually very easy when you're with the right person, or the right kind of person who's interested in the same things that you're interested in terms of a relationship, and who's actually pursuing you for that. It's a completely different feeling and story that you'll be telling when you're with someone who is actually interested in putting in effort, right?
Yeah, I do think that's true. I do think you'll be able to feel that difference. Where it might be difficult is if you haven't felt that for a while. So you're kind of like, oh, I'm not really pattern matching it. Maybe the last several connections I've had have been low effort, and maybe before that it was completely barren and I had no interest. So this little bit of interest is better. It's a bit like you'll know if you know. I'm not saying that necessarily means this is the person that you're going to spend a full long-term relationship or rest of your life with. I'm saying it from the perspective of you'll know when that investment and interest is coming from the other side in a way that feels sustained and real, effectively. Yeah. It will feel pretty different, Yeah. I mean, I also, I in my heyday, I played a bit more sport than I do now, but I'm now the senior member of the soccer team. The difference. There's basically players that you play with who show up every week, and you just know it. You'll be like, yeah, of course, Sam's going to be there, Paul's going to be there, Dave's going to be there. When they say they're going to be there, they're going to be there. And then there's some people for whom soccer doesn't occur to them like that, and that's okay. It's just they're not the people that you build the team around, because you never quite know. Like, oh, if that person gets busy, they don't come. If they're traveling, they don't come. They don't let us know. It's just a different kind of thing. And that's not where you build the team. It doesn't mean that we can't use those people occasionally, but it's not trying to treat them. If you were trying to treat them like you were building a team around them, you wouldn't have a team.
Yeah, so true. I love that analogy. Love everything you shared here today. Do you want to recap these 5 points, or is there anything else you want to say on this topic before we talk about your 50% off coaching offer?
I'll run through them super quick, and then let's talk about the offer, and then I've got a little bonus 6th one to end with.
Great. I'd love to hear that.
So what we've talked about so far is sober up. Sober is the new sexy. Don't make additions for the guy. Be in reality as best you can. See it for what it is, not that you're having to add or manipulate yourself in the process. Secondly, don't take it personally. And one of the ways that you can do that is to repeat this idea that a guy has a right to put the effort in that he wants. He has a right to be low effort. You have a right to not choose to engage or continue to engage in low effort behavior. Right? So you sort of allow him his sovereignty. You claim your sovereignty. If it's not a match, we call that discernment. Rather than judging him that he's wrong, discern what's right for you. Thirdly, don't get into reciprocation that doesn't serve you. Right? There is an application process to date you, and a guy shouldn't just be walking into wishing you good morning. Right? And I've seen this, by the way, with people who've never met the guy. Right? That they've met on the apps, now they're texting, and now it's good night, good morning. texting her several times a day, typically that's not going to serve you because you don't yet have the data to know, is this the kind of guy that I want to have that relationship with? Like that comes through the dating process. So there is an application dating process to be with you. Fourthly, practice speaking your truth. This is the advantage, if you will. This is the opportunity of a low effort guy, is that you can practice saying, hey, I'm not sure that this is enough for me. You do you, but I also got to do me. And if needs be, have a list of requirements that you can communicate to someone, like, this is really what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this kind of energy, attention, dates, progression. And fifthly, be willing to downshift and or go no contact. And if you're not willing to do that, be really clear why. And let's make sure it's not because of false hope that you're still holding on to an idea that it could be different, or that you don't want to be unkind to the guy, because actually your truth is generally going to be kinder to people than pretending you're available for something that's not actually true for you. So those are the 5.
That sounds great. Yeah. And I know for a very, very limited time, you are offering 50% off your private coaching. If people use the coupon code Helena, just my first name, Helena. The link to that is in the description. If you're watching on YouTube, on my podcast, that's the first link in the episode notes. You can always email me too if you're having trouble finding any of these links. HelenaHartCoaching@gmail.com. What would you like to say about that? And then I'd love to hear the bonus tip that you have for everyone at the end too.
Yeah. So as you said in your introduction, I'm a transformational coach. Right. So what that means is I really try to help someone transform into their more authentic self. So, I'll just own it. I am really good at helping people drop their not self, the parts of them or the ways of being that they show up with that are not actually true to them. So for any of you that are curious about bringing more of you forward, rather than your anxiety, your doubts, outdated ways of being you, people-pleasing, self-shaming, inner critic, even being super judgmental on men, any of those things, typically when we dig in, the more you bring you forward authentically, other people are much easier for you to be with, right? Whether that's friendship or any other kind of relationship, the more you get to own you, the more other people can be themselves and you can cut them some slack. So if you're interested in digging in and doing that kind of deeper work, or if you're in a place at the moment where you're like, look, I'm not getting dates, or I was in one long-term relationship a long time ago and I haven't really gotten back out there and I'm afraid to, or if you're in a situation where you are in some kind of love triangle, or perhaps you're in connection with a married guy, or you're with someone that's not structurally or emotionally available to you. Done a lot of work with helping people get their clarity, find their truth, and walk their path with those things. So would love to hear from any of all of you that might be of interest to, and get in now. And by the way, even if you're not ready to coach today, there's also, as part of this, you can get into this. The offer will work for next year. You just have to get and enroll now. So
got it.
Look forward to it.
The end of the week. So yeah, if you're interested, definitely check that out today, because I know it's just a very limited time offer. And what is that bonus tip? I'm actually very curious to hear this myself.
So the last piece of this is, how can you approach your dating from the place of, I'm going to turn it over to life? So this is a more spiritual perspective on approaching your dating. And it basically means I'm going to trust that when there is enough mutual interest from me and someone else, to your words earlier, I'll know it. And so until that's the case, what I'm going to practice is being in no expectations about my dating, of really practicing non-attachment and sobriety in my dating, not making it anything other than, I'm meeting this person, let's show up, let's see, stay myself, stay curious, but I'm not building a story, I'm not building an expectation, I'm not investing until such a point where that makes sense for me. So it's a way of actually taking a little bit of the burden off your shoulders, and kind of, however you think of this, offering it as a prayer, or as some kind of manifestation, or as just a deep desire towards life, saying, hey, I would like to be with someone. I would like to get into a relationship. I trust your timing. And it's okay if the thing you bring me tomorrow isn't exactly what I want. I will discern that, right? So we sometimes make this simple. We say, you ask life for an orange, and actually it gives you an apple. So you're still grateful. Thank you for the apple. You still, if you want to, you can take that date, have a couple of dates if it's appropriate, practice the things you want to practice, realize it's not the thing that you want, let it go without attachment. You ask again, hey, can I have an orange? oh gosh, I'm getting another apple. Okay. But it's sort of like trusting the bigger process of life, that life is for you and it will bring you the things that you need on your unique curriculum of your path in life. And it doesn't mean that it's always linear and straightforward, but it does mean that it's for you and that there's something here. You know, I sometimes joke with people, you know, I didn't graduate Cambridge to talk about dating, right? But the reason I want to talk about dating is because it's an inroad into some of your deepest development, because the stuff that shows up there is normally real self inner work. And that's the work that I honestly get most excited about doing with people. If that's of interest, obviously check out the coaching special. But it's actually a place to live life from. Like, I'm not the center of the entire universe, right? Clearly there's 8 billion people here, and clearly many more people who lived before we were even on this earth. So you are simultaneously incredibly significant because you're unique in all time. And you're also insignificant in that we're one of 8 billion people, or even more if we include the dead people. And so turn it over to life. Like, there's bigger forces at play here. And if it's almost a way of saying, who I end up dating, it's not even, you can't control who comes into your path, right? What you can control is that discernment that we're talking about. Is this a good fit for me? Is this someone I want to be with? Is this someone that's investing in me? That you can't control the other stuff. So why not turn that over to life? Say, hey, you got to arrange that for me. I'll show up, but I'm not going to sit there late at night worrying about who I'm going to meet tomorrow, because that's not fully in my control. What is in my control is doing my self-work and practicing my sobriety and discernment when I come into contact with someone. But the rest, I'll leave that to the bigger forces, however you think of that, whether you're an atheist, agnostic, God, universe, however you think of that.
That is so powerful. I remember, I think it was 2 podcast episodes ago, we talked about the fact that, or you said that letting go of an unavailable guy or a low effort guy will give you more in terms of your own personal development than going to some elite yoga studio every day, or going on some retreat where you meditate on a mountaintop. And I think that's so true. So I love everything you had to say on that and this topic today. I know we're over on time, but thank you so much. Thank you to Daphne and everyone who was listening live. We always love doing these episodes together. I'd love to bring you back on soon as well. And make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel if you're watching on YouTube, and go follow me over on my podcast. It's called Master Your Magnetism on Spotify and Apple. That's where I'm spending most of my time these days. If you're listening over there, just click the follow button. I have new episodes coming out every week. And thanks again, Jack. This was great. I hope we can do another one soon. And thanks again to everyone listening. I had a great time.
Thank you so much for hosting me. Thanks everyone tuning in. And I look forward to hearing from those that this is resonating with if you want to do something more.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
All right. Take care.